Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our annual Global Social Justice Research Symposium. I'm Ryan Craig, Assistant Research Professor and Special Assistant to the Vice President for Mission and Ministry and Director of Academic Initiatives. On behalf of my colleagues at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs and the Center for Social Justice Research, Teaching, and Service, I am delighted that you are here with us today in person and on Zoom on this beautiful day. I can't wait to learn more with you and hear about the incredible research that is before us. Our symposium features Hoya researchers in CSJ's signature fellowship program, the Education and Social Justice Project, a 14-year collaboration with the Berkeley Center. Also on our schedule today are presentations from two Laidlaw scholars, a Provost Distinguished Undergraduate Research Fellow, a Maeve McKean Fellow, a Kalorama Fellow, a Lisa J. Rains Fellow, and a Penner Family Experiences Awardee. You will hear more about each of these undergraduate research opportunities before each panel. Special thanks to the Berkeley Center crew for managing the tech logistics today, especially Shimong Tong and his students in the back, Amy Vandervliet and Siobhan Coney, and then the SETS crew and the staff at the Levy Center for setting up the event space for us. Each panel will share their research with questions reserved for the end. To our audience members on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat and they will be relayed to our student researchers during the Q&A section. I'll kick us off by sharing a little bit more regarding the Education and Social Justice Fellowship. I have had the great fortune to partner with the CSJ on the Education and Social Justice Project, or ESJ as we call it, now in its 14th year of preparing students to conduct field-based research on local global initiatives at the intersection of education and social justice. This fellowship is a full calendar year and includes robust mentorship, an introductory research methods course, 3 weeks of on-the-ground research, and digital scholarship training for fellows to produce their vertical case studies. All of our past projects are available on the Berkeley Center's website. In 2024, ESJ awarded summer fellowships to 3 students who spent 3 to 4 weeks with institutions engaged in efforts to promote social justice through education in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Poland. I would like to offer our deepest gratitude to their host sites for their hospitality and care that they provided for our students. It is the work of our community partners that we seek to lift up today, especially Professor Artur Wolek, Martina Vidovic, Jacqueline Bradnavik, and Father Shimo, as well as countless staff and volunteers at these incredible institutions who provided contacts, fielded questions, took them to local sites, and always made themselves available for Zoom calls. All right, I forgot to put my slide up and their slide up. There we go. Oh, I need to unmute the Zoom. Oh my gosh. They haven't been able to hear me. Okay, so sorry for our Zoom participants. You haven't missed anything, I promise. I will introduce all our fellows and then invite Michelle to start the panel. Michelle Hadebe conducted field research with a local organization in Krakow, Poland. Menahil Mahmoud was based out of Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina alongside Julianne Menezes. Michelle will be joining us via Zoom from Doha. Let me get that all set up for her. Okay. All right, Michelle, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Hello everyone, can you all hear me and can you all see my screen?
Yes, we're good. You can go ahead and get started.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Michelle Hadebe and welcome to my presentation. The title of this presentation is Finding Belonging, and we will be exploring how Ukrainian youth find community and build bonds at their education hubs in Krakow. Now, a brief overview. We're going to talk a little bit about me, a little bit about Krakow, a little bit about the education hubs. Then we're going to explore some key findings, and then I'm going to talk you through my next steps. Now, like I said, my name is Michelle Hadebe. I am a senior at Georgetown University in Qatar, majoring in international politics and minoring in Africana studies. I was born in Pretoria, South Africa, but have been a global nomad all my life. I am not new to the world of social justice research. My past projects have included looking at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in post-apartheid South Africa, and currently I will be doing a project looking at collective memory in post-genocide Rwanda. Now, it has been 940 days since Russia invaded Ukraine, and that has sparked a humanitarian crisis in Europe that has led to about 9.3 million Ukrainians leaving their homes and more than 10,000 civilians who have unfortunately lost their lives. A place that is very essential in understanding the refugee crisis caused by this conflict is looking at Krakow. Krakow is a city in Poland, and it has welcomed over 120,000 Ukrainian refugees. And those refugees and many other economic refugees that have come to Krakow
Recording in progress.
have made up about 20% of Krakow's population to date. Now, let's talk more about the EduHubs. The EduHubs were my host site throughout my time in Krakow, and they are an initiative by the Ignatianum Foundation and the Aspire Business Association in Krakow, and they were founded to support Ukrainian teenagers who are displaced by the war from their homelands. So they are very unique in that they bring together, one, the resources from the Aspire Business Association, as well as the university's educational programming, in order to create a safe learning space and a social space for these teenagers. Now, a little bit more about the EduHubs. They are facilitated and they are led by teachers and facilitators as well as community volunteers. Of some of the classes that they offer language classes in English, Polish, Ukrainian. They offer some financial literacy courses for the teenagers, as well as art therapy. And this is particularly important because a lot of the students have experienced a lot of trauma as a result of the conflict and the migration caused by it. The EduHubs are also important because they offer students the opportunity for student leadership, especially for the students who are much older, to lead the younger ones. Now, let's talk a little bit more about my research. So I was in Krakow for a month and I conducted interviews, focus groups, site observations, and content analysis, speaking to teenagers, educators, and as well as representatives from both the Ignatianum University and the Aspire Business Alliance. And of everything that came out from my research, 3 things really stood out to me. The first one is a key finding around how students find belonging and the community fosters and the institution fosters a sense of community building. The second one is around language dynamics and how students prioritize the use of the English language, the Polish language, and Ukrainian language in different circumstances. And the third one has to do with how the students are confronted by the traumas of war and how they are battling and overcoming them. Now, let's do a little bit of a deep dive into finding belonging. And this is going to particularly look at the student's perspective. When I was doing interviews and focus groups, 3 key themes came out around how students particularly find belonging. And the first one had to do with cultural affinity. A lot of the students, like the quote mentions here, find it much easier to make friends with people from their country and who speak their language. And part of the reason why they come to the education hubs is because the education hubs have students from their country who speak their language, and as such, they are able to find acceptance and affinity. And closely affiliated with affinity and acceptance is this idea of friendship, right? That students come to the EduHubs, they form friendships, and beyond just the educational enrichment part of the institution, the friendship is what keeps them coming to the education hubs. And that plays a very important role for them, especially because they left their friends either at home or their friends have also migrated to different parts of the world. The other important part about finding belonging is this idea of othering. So some students come to the education hubs because it shields them and shelters them from the experience of being othered. And one of the students mentioned that they think that the Polish people make jokes of them or fun of them in class. And when they are in the education hubs, they are more so able to find affinity and acceptance there. Now, on the other side, looking at the institution, It's very interesting how the institution, and by the institution I mean the Ignatianum Foundation and the Aspire Business Alliance together as they create the education hubs, how that as an institution creates community building and a space for belonging to take place. And the first one really is just creating the safe space, and that looks like the physical place for that to happen. And one of the representatives from the Aspire Business Alliance even noted that the idea of the education hubs, it was basically to form a refuge, somewhere that the Ukrainian children can go and feel safe. And especially for students who've experienced the traumas of war and the uncertainty that comes with migration, that safety and that sense of stability is very important for them. The second part is fostering integration into Polish society. Institutionally, the institution really longs to see these students integrated in Polish societies, not just finding belonging only amongst themselves. Because the reality, unfortunately, with the conflict in Ukraine is that we may not be sure when it will end. And for these students, especially who are much older, they now need to start thinking about college and start thinking about jobs. And integration is a very essential part of their next step of their lives. And the institution comes in to facilitate that. And the third part is resource mobilization. A quote that really stood out for me is one that one of the representatives from the Aspire Business Association said. They said, at the start of the education hubs, they had students who were at home and had nothing to do. And they had businesses that had a lot of office space and resources, but they didn't know what to do with them. And they had volunteers and people who had time and were willing hearts and willing hands. But all these three groups did not know how to meet each other and coordinate and mobilize resources to be put for good use. And that form of resource mobilization is another way in which the institution creates community building. Now, before I move forward, it's very important that we see both finding belonging from the student's perspective and institutional community building as separate sides of the same coin that helps in belonging and community building. So institutionally, the institution comes from the top down, and the students find a sense of belonging at the grassroots level. So these two, the students and the institution are actually not working in conflict with one another. They're working together, coming from it from different perspectives, and hence fulfilling the mandate of the education hubs, which is to create a safe space and a refuge for Ukrainian teenagers, and ultimately creating a safe space for them within the city of Poland. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are asking, what's next for you on this project? Well, the next steps for me look like delving deeper into the other two key findings that emerged, particularly around language and facing the traumas of war. And I hope that at the end of exploring those findings in detail, I'll be able to refine my conclusions and provide a comprehensive report. And that will be all for my presentation. Thank you for your time and thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Michelle. If you want to still hang out on there, we'll bring you back up. You can go away, but we'll bring you back up for the Q&A. All right, now we have Menahil coming up. Let me get your presentation pulled up here. There you go, and you can just control it from there.
Good morning. My name is Menahil Mahmoud Khan, and I'm a third-year student from Georgetown University's branch campus in Qatar. For my Education and Social Justice Fellowship, I conducted 3 weeks of fieldwork in June 2024 in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was hosted by the John Paul Youth Pastoral Center and studied their interreligious program, Let's Step Forward Together. I will start this presentation by introducing myself and my academic interests, after which I will provide a short introduction of the interreligious program and address one of my primary findings, the lived experience of interreligious dialogue among the program's participants. On to my introduction. I was born and raised in Lahore, one of the largest and most densely populated metropolitan cities in Pakistan. Pakistan is a developing country with a substantial young population that is predominantly Muslim, with many smaller minority groups. I went on to pursue a degree in foreign service at Georgetown's branch campus in Qatar, where I study international politics with a focus on conflict studies, interreligious dynamics, and international law. My academic interests lie in examining issues of decolonization, social justice, and the alleviation of systemic oppression within global contexts. In line with these interests, I traveled to South Africa last fall through Georgetown's Zones of Conflict, Zones of Peace program to study the memorialization of apartheid and peacemaking processes in the country through 2 weeks of fieldwork. I'm furthering these interests here at Georgetown's main campus in DC in many ways, including through my ESJ fellowship. This summer, the fellowship took me to Bosnia, where I explored a topic close to my heart, the intersection of education, religion, and social justice. Sarajevo, which is described by many people I encountered as the Jerusalem of Europe for its rich history, religious diversity, offers invaluable lessons to the rest of the world in healing from conflict. There are 3 major ethno-religious groups in Bosnia: Muslim Bosniaks, Catholic Croats, and Orthodox Serbs. There's also a strong correlation between ethnicity and religion in Bosnia. In other words, people's ethnic and religious identities are almost always synonymous and interchangeable. From 1992 to 1995, the 3 main groups were at war. Ethnic cleansing was perpetrated, mainly by Serb forces and to a lesser extent by Croat and Bosniak forces. This violence culminated in the Srebrenica genocide of July 11, 1995, when Serb forces murdered more than 8,000 Muslim men and boys in a single day. Our research trip coincided with the 29th anniversary of this genocide. Pictured here is a graveyard of Srebrenica victims, a common sight in Sarajevo. It is against this backdrop that the Youth Center has been operating since 2007 as a Catholic faith-based organization. The interreligious program, Let's Step Forward Together, started in 2013 with the goal of facilitating connections between young people from different religious backgrounds and regions of the country. Since then, it has directly engaged more than 10,000 young people through its programming. In preparation for the program, the center conducts an annual recruitment drive for its participants, primarily through school visits. Moreover, a call is sent out for young people to volunteer to be peer educators. Very often, these peer educators are previous participants of the center's various programs who return every year to be trained and lead the next cohort. During the program itself, which takes place during the summer and lasts 1 week, participants engage in a range of activities, from peace-building workshops and visits to different places of worship, to sports, creative arts, and religiously themed dinners. When describing the objective of the program, Shimo, the director of the Youth Center, said, "We are starting from this place as a Catholic place, but everyone is welcomed, and we are trying to bring those who find in their religion reason for tolerance, for living together, for respecting each other." He went on to say, "We cannot pretend that people are living peacefully and everything is okay when we see that there are prejudices and there are people who do not want to enter into contact with the others." In a similar vein, one of the program coordinators, Amina, described the goal of the program as meeting, that young people have the opportunity to meet each other, sharing their experiences about their traditions, families, their community, not just speak about war and hate. Therefore, according to the leadership of the program, Bosnian youth need a program that brings them together and offers a way around the ethno-religious divisions that have persisted since the war and dominate public and private life. These divisions are most evident in the segregated school system called 2 schools under 1 roof, a phenomenon I found very fascinating. Today, there are more than 50 schools across Bosnia where students are segregated on the basis of their ethnicity. Ayub, a peer educator, described, "Unfortunately, the system here is telling us that 2 different people from different religious backgrounds cannot coexist in 1 classroom. Moreover, a participant in my focus group shared, I went to elementary school for 9 years and never saw Bosniaks. We were completely divided. Even though it's the same building, we never had the same classes. We even had different professors. Everything was completely different. It's like we never met them." Naturally, the primary question forming in my mind was, how then would these young people engage with each other through the interreligious program? Through semi-structured interviews, participant observation, and a focus group, I found that the participants of the program are experientially living interreligious dialogue. What does this mean? These students lived interreligious dialogue by forming friendships and nurturing relationships that transcended the typical labels of religion, ethnicity, and geographical origin. This was evident in their interactions during scheduled activities and leisure time at the center. The center provided a refuge from the pressures of conforming to Bosnian society's divisions while offering a space to directly confront the role of religion in their lives. For example, a field trip to different religious sites and places of worship, which I joined, allowed them to actively reclaim parts of the city they previously believed were off limits. The center also served as a place for identity formation and reflection. Workshops on identity were particularly impactful, encouraging participants to reflect on aspects of themselves beyond their religion and ethnicity. Interestingly, when introducing themselves to me in their focus group, participants mentioned hobbies, hometowns, career aspirations, but not their religious or ethnic backgrounds. The peer educators and staff at the center consistently exemplified this mindset, making it an integral part of the center's culture. In all of these ways and more, these students were experientially living interreligious dialogue. This illuminated for me that interreligious dialogue is a how, not a what, a living practice rather than a theoretical construct as we often conceptualize it at Georgetown and in academia. However, there's a critical detail I would like to note. While the leaders and staff of the center articulated a need for Bosnian youth to unlearn prejudices and break out of monoethnic silos, the young people I spoke to demonstrated a very clear understanding of the forces they believe are keeping them apart and were proactive about correcting this by seeking out the interreligious program. This is best encapsulated by a quote from one of the peer educators, Stefan. "They're special because they want it. They need interaction with young people from another religion. That's the most beautiful thing I can see." By seeking out the program, these young people are taking a step towards connection and community building. They do not subscribe to the prejudices of previous generations who lived through the war because the war is not their touchstone. They also embody a sense of service and commitment to share their ideas of tolerance and peace building with their friends and families. Very often, the center follows them on this journey and provides resources and support for projects they start when they return home. The practice of interreligious dialogue is just one aspect of my research. There's so much more that I have not been able to address in this presentation, such as the role of peer educators and volunteers in sustaining the program, the relationship between the youth center and the Bosnian school system, and young people's perception of religion in their day-to-day lives. These findings will be addressed in great depth in my report at the end of the year. When I think of what's next for the Let's Step Forward Together program, I record the words of Željko, one of the program coordinators. "I would like one day for the project to be useless in Bosnia. There will be no need for the project. That is the main goal. I don't know if it's ever going to be possible. There's just a hope." I also see great potential for expertise sharing and applying this model of interreligious dialogue in countries that are also healing from conflict or where interreligious tensions are prevalent and left unaddressed. I want to express my gratitude to our hosts at the Youth Center who went above and beyond to welcome me and Julianne into their community. It was a special joy to witness your efforts in overcoming historical prejudices by bringing together young people from across the country. To everyone who shared their experiences with me, your dedication to peace building and honesty were inspiring. Hvala, or thank you.
All right, Julie, do you want to come up? Okay. Okay, should be good to go.
Hello and welcome. My name is Julianne Meneses, and I'm excited to present my project, Democracy and Nonformal Education, Creation of Agency. To briefly introduce myself, I'm a senior in the college, majoring in Justice and Peace Studies with a minor in Spanish, originally from Roxbury, New Jersey. Coming from an immigrant family, I have always believed in the importance of having a global perspective and learning from others. My ultimate career goal is to become an immigration lawyer with a long-term aim in transitioning into immigration policy research to create safer and more efficient pathways for migration. ESJ has been a transformative experience, allowing me to widen my worldview and deepening my passion for qualitative research. I had the invaluable opportunity to conduct fieldwork abroad in Bosnia and Herzegovina, made even better with the incumbent Manal Hill. For context, Bosnia is situated in southeastern Europe, bordering Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro. Following the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords in 1995, Bosnia was established as a single state composed of two political entities, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republika Srpska. The Federation is predominantly home to Croats and Bosniaks, while Republika Srpska is primarily Serb. Within the Federation, the territory is further divided into 10 cantons, each with its own government, similar to the state system in the U.S. Both Manahil and I worked with the John Paul II Center to complete our individual research. The center is located in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia, which, as the previous map showed, lies close to the borders of the country's two political entities. Established in 2007, a little over a decade after the peace signing, the center was created to provide a safe space for young people across the country to come together after being separated by the war. As a Catholic youth center, it draws inspiration from its namesake, Pope John Paul II, who emphasized the vital role and influence of youth in shaping society. Since its inception, the center has tremendously grown, now providing more than 40 programmatic activities open to individuals of all ages, religious backgrounds, and ethnicities. While the center offers a wide range of programs, all are guided by three core principles: faith, education, and meeting place. Faith involves the direct or indirect incorporation of Christian values into its activities. Education focuses on broadening young people's knowledge beyond their everyday experiences. And finally, meeting place, the center's founding purpose, represents the ongoing commitment to connecting youth from different areas in Bosnia, fostering unity and friendship. Understanding these three principles is integral to my research of the center's democracy education initiative, Vision is Decision. As Stefan, one of the center's project coordinators, explained, the goal of Vision is Decision is to show young people that they are important, that we want to listen to their voices, and that this country actually wants to listen to their voices. This sentiment aligns with the promotion of human dignity, a value upheld by the Catholic Church, as participants learn within a shared space how to effectively use their voices to advocate for and protect their individual and collective well-being. To provide further context, Vision is Decision, established in 2019, is specifically designed to educate 15 to 18-year-olds on becoming responsible members of society by enhancing their existing talents and abilities. The program consists of 3 weekend modules throughout the academic year, bringing together 50 students from 5 different high schools. While the topics may vary from year to year, they all relate to the promotion of democracy and youth engagement. Above all, the program wants to foster the initiative participants demonstrated by choosing to attend these modules. The program's focus on developing individual skills arises from a combination of the general lack of skill building in formal education and the pervasive influence of political propaganda, both of which were noted by the interviewees. Although not singular to Bosnia, the country's formal education relies on a teacher-centered approach, where memorization and recalling of facts are prioritized rather than critical engagement with the material. This issue is exacerbated by the highly politicized nature of education in the country. Since education is governed at the cantonal level, this decentralization leads to significant variations in the curriculum. In monoethnic communities, this increases the risk of promoting ethnocentric narratives, as evident in the selection of approved textbooks by each canton. As mentioned by Manahil, the 2 schools under one roof system remains a bastion of ethnic division in the country. The lack of a unified Bosnian identity is also shown through the decision of some schools to follow the Croatian curriculum, where Croat students learn about their ethnic country of origin rather than their national identity. With these inequalities in education, many young people leave Bosnia to pursue their studies and jobs abroad. However, the goal of Vision is Decision is to show youth that they all have a meaningful place in Bosnian society and that opportunities for growth and success can be found at home together. Delving into my research, I was guided by these 2 questions. What is the intersection of education and democracy, and how is democracy conceptualized by youth in Bosnia? My data collection occurred over the span of 3 weeks throughout the month of June 2024, where I conducted 13 semi-structured interviews and 2 participant focus groups, both of which were conducted in English. From my data, I have identified 3 main findings: the effects of nonformal education, the creation of community, and societal involvement. The common thread linking these findings is a stress on agency. Through informal education, participants gain the skills necessary for informed decision-making, allowing them to challenge the harmful narratives imposed by their families, politicians, religious leaders, or broader society. They also have the autonomy to choose whom to build relationships with, an opportunity they might not typically have in their daily lives. Finally, participants decide how they wish to engage with their local communities and society as a whole, whether through after-school programs, volunteering, or voting. For today's presentation, I will focus on the effects of nonformal education, as I believe the center's approach to education lays the foundation for participants' agency within and beyond Vision is Decision. As part of its pedagogical approach, the center strives to differentiate itself from the typical classroom setting. Namely, the program's lecturers employ a peer-to-peer dynamic instead of positioning themselves as authority figures. This relationship fosters a neutral learning environment that encourages open expression, sharing opinions, and asking questions. One lecturer even noted the effectiveness of being politically incorrect to motivate participants to share their genuine thoughts without fear of judgment from peers. Sustainable relationship building also occurs through the implementation of group activities such as debates and simulations. These shared learning experiences not only expand participants' knowledge by having them build on each other's insight, but also teach them how to collaborate with differing perspectives. Moving outside the physical space of the center, Vision is Decision takes participants on both local and international trips, including visits to Parliament, the National Archives, and even Germany. Instead of simply hearing about or replicating political processes, participants explore Sarajevo and beyond to gain firsthand experience with governmental institutions. The core activity that supports all three of the aforementioned components is the center's reliance on participant feedback, emphasizing the central role of youth agency. As stated before, the structure of Vision Decision is highly flexible, and faculty use evaluations to ensure that the center continually meets the evolving needs of its participants. For this educational approach to succeed, faculty and staff understand that the center exists for the benefit of its participants and that they are there for the youth, not the other way around. As Director Don Shimo emphasizes, the goal is to guide them toward a path that leads to a truly beautiful life. Thus, the center plays a supportive, rather than directive, role in the lives of young people. Through its educational approach, Vision is Decision empowers participants to recognize their significance in society. To reiterate Stefan's comment, the program emphasizes that their voices have impact and that they possess the ability to make the changes that they want to see. With the center's unwavering support, the program nurtures participants' potential, embedding in them a stronger sense of self. Youth come to understand that if they don't take action, someone else will act on their behalf. However, this action is not made without thought. By developing critical thinking skills such as communication and online literacy, participants make educated decisions like who to vote for based on their own research and experiences. This increased confidence in reasoning also strengthens their resilience against political propaganda and manipulation, helping them avoid being misled by falsehoods. The impact of Vision is Decision ultimately combats political disillusionment among youth, instilling in them hope for the future of their country. It is clear that after completing the program, participants gain a nuanced understanding of how democracy should function in society. When asked during focus groups, "What does democracy mean to you?" the responses highlighted the importance of personal freedom of expression alongside a strong emphasis on love and respect for others, values that are consistently modeled throughout the program. This self-transformation was particularly evident in the experience of one former participant, Manuel, who recognized the stark contrast between the education he received in school and at the center regarding democracy. Through Vision is Decision, he gained a deeper understanding of democracy and direct experience with its principles, inspiring him to pursue further studies in the field. While not all participants aspired to careers in politics, they unanimously noted that Vision is Decision helped them realize politics is not distant or separate from them. It directly involves and affects their lives. Pictured here is Democracy Alley, a row of trees, which each tree symbolizing a cohort from Vision is Decision. As the trees continue to grow, so do the participants as they carry what they learned in the program throughout their lives. It's important to note that I interviewed former participants sometime after completing Vision is Decision, some years later, and they still reported personal growth, including improved public speaking skills and a greater desire to engage in civic and societal activities, underscoring the program's lasting impact. To build on the success of Vision is Decision, many interviewees emphasize the importance of including individuals from underrepresented communities, such as the Roma, who lack adequate political power. The program has instilled greater confidence in the participants, and they hope others can benefit similarly. As one participant put it, "When you come here, you're already succeeding." I would like to extend the deepest gratitude to the CSJ and the Berkeley Center for giving me this incredible opportunity, the John Paul II Center for extending their support and resources as our host site, and most importantly, to the participants who were kind enough to share their stories with me and made this research possible. Thank you all.
We have plenty of time for Q&A. If you are here in the audience and you would like to ask a question, there is a mic at the back of the room that you can ask your question into. That will help us amplify the sound both in the room and on the Zoom. If you are on Zoom and would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A and we'll check in and make sure that we get to your question. Is there anything? No, okay, nothing in there right now. Would anyone like to get us started? Does anyone have any questions?
First of all, thank you to all of you for this wonderful research that you presented. My question is to Julian. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about at what point in your research did you begin to see the intersection to what you do here in terms of classes, theories, models, what you cover in classes. At what point would you say you were able to identify an aha moment of bridging what you're doing in field research and what you do here in classes and academia?
Okay. I think the first one that came to mind was through our Intro to Jobs class when we talk about the imposition of democracy through external bodies. Through the Dayton Peace Accords, the U.S. actually mediated the end to the Bosnian War and implemented their structure in government. Their presidency involves 3 presidents from the main ethnic groups, and they are on a rotating schedule. And there's many research showing that this is a very outdated model and actually upheld a lot of the ethnic divisions that caused the war. So I think talking to the participants and even just faculty and staff in the center, I understood deeper what effects that external involvement has on society. But moving towards the grassroots perspective, I really got to see the impact of the youth center there and really understand how much they care in building their community and really instilling in this youth that they have agency in their lives and that they can make this country better. So yeah, it was really eye-opening to just to see how intelligent the youth are there. And it was such a pleasure talking to all of them.
You ask a question, please introduce yourself.
Sorry, I'm trying to ask a question and everything is falling. Hi, everyone. I'm AK. I'm a research associate at the Center for Social Justice. Thank you all so much for sharing your research. It was great to learn from you. I haven't formed these 2 thoughts into questions, but I'd love to hear just how you respond to them. The first one being, I believe one of the presentations mentioned that students who were engaging in the Sarajevo Let's Move Forward Together project, they were introducing themselves but left out that religious ethnic part of their identity in those introductions. For me, I was left wondering, is that them maybe suppressing or hiding that part of the identity rather than confronting it and learning healthy ways to talk about it openly and live with pride? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And the second question with the same project was, what do you think is the role of parents and communities in encouraging students to be thinking in this way and engaging in such programs? So I remember there was a difference between past generations and how they'd experienced ethnic tensions versus this generation. But I'm wondering, what is the subset of parents who maybe have a very different point of view than others in their own generation, and how does that influence the students?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. So I'll address the first one first, the idea of religious and ethnic identity and where that falls in their students' understanding of themselves. They certainly weren't hiding their religious or ethnic identity. They weren't ashamed of it. They didn't even see it in a very negative light. But what they did take issue with was the way Bosnian society seemed to impose a lot of restrictions, belief systems, basically on them because of their identity. They certainly believe that their religion is very important to them, but it's not the primary aspect of their identity. And that's something that they were able to live with and embrace during their time at the center, and they want to continue with that outside of the program as well. Regarding parents and older generations, that's actually a very big aspect of my research. It's certainly going to be one of my secondary findings because the participants themselves would bring this idea up very frequently. The idea that they find themselves sandwiched between like these different generations and the burden of the war, the trauma that their parents and grandparents experienced seems to trickle down to them, and then it affects them in their daily life. It's very interesting because I would say there are two groups of parents that I could make out. So first you have the parents that are relatively open-minded and they're comfortable with their children participating in these sort of programs. And then, interestingly, there's also a group of parents that did not even know what their children were doing. And so these children were literally like on a mission to engage in interreligious dialogue very secretly and in a clandestine way. So I just found that so amazing and inspiring. But yeah, I would say both of these ideas that you brought up go together very well. So the idea of religious and ethnic identity, and then also the traumas of the war. These students wanted to create an identity for themselves that was different from what they were inheriting, whether that's their religion or the way they engage with their parents and grandparents. So I hope that answers your question.
We have a question from the Zoom, and this is for all of the presenters. As a quote-unquote outsider to the community, what helped you to build trust and relationships with the people you interviewed? And additionally, what was challenging, if anything?
Michelle, did you hear
Yes.
that? Yeah. Okay. Do you want to answer first?
Yeah, let me answer that first. I think for me, I had to recognize that these students, particularly for the students, because the adults were a little bit more open, these students needed to form a sense of trust with me because unfortunately with all that they've experienced, I am asking of them to kind of engage in topics that they might not feel or not necessarily uncomfortable with, but it's something really sensitive, right? So I think for me, the biggest part was sharing a little bit about me, right? So it's like removing that barrier of saying, I may be an outsider, yes, but my name is Michelle, right? I am from South Africa. This is what I like. This is where I went to high school. These are the things that I enjoyed, especially for the teenagers. That was very important because I think in that way it helped them not see me as a teacher or this outside researcher coming to ask me about random stuff, right? So I think that like formed that form of relationship, and that was very important. And I think something that I did when I first got there was also explain my story of how I've moved around the world. So one common thread that the students had was migration and migrating, and of course I migrated under very different circumstances than they did, but that idea of being from one place but then living in another and making friends in another place and finding a sense of belonging, I kind of shared that before I even asked them anything about their experience. So that kind of opened the door. And I remember one of the students even mentioned that, oh, so in a way you're kind of like us, not in the sense that you live in a country or you've lived in countries that are not your home. So that became very important, establishing that sense of connection, but also introducing myself as Michelle, who likes painting and enjoys.
I'll add to that as the faculty facilitator that was overseeing Michelle's research. I don't know if you noticed in her presentation, but she mentioned that she actually spent 4 weeks in Krakow and not 3 weeks. And part of that was because of the trust building, that she was working with a very vulnerable population of recently arrived youth from Ukraine. And so she needed to do a little bit more of that trust building. And so for much of the first week, she was just doing observations and spending time with the students in the classroom and not conducting interviews during that first week. So that was part of our sort of approach as well as the faculty advisors, helping her build that trust with her participants.
Just to add to Michelle's response, I think a lot of things go into developing trust over a very short amount of time, so just 3 weeks. For me, and I think Julianne can also attest to this, it required spending time with these students and with the staff and peer educators at the center before we even started interviewing them. So like sharing meals with them, having like conversations after they were done with their workshops, going on these field visits with them, all of that was very helpful. But then also giving them the space to talk and to share their experiences, which few of the participants really emphasized was a very moving and like novel experience for them because they hadn't been afforded that opportunity before. And so for that reason, I think it's also helpful to be an outsider to a certain extent because when you're coming in with a fresh perspective and you're there just to learn from them directly, they really appreciated that. And I think that can apply to many research sites.
Yeah, building on what Manahil said, the participants were, especially the youth, were very open to sharing their stories with us. And I remember after, I think it was my first focus group afterwards, we just all had a conversation, didn't even talk about like our research or anything, just kind of shared our own experience with our lives. And like what Manahil was saying, they had the space to like share their identity beyond their religious background, ethnic background. And I think for me personally, I worked really closely with the head of Vision is Decision, Jacqueline. We went on individual trips. She took me to Parliament and the National Archives. But beyond that, like when we were just driving in the car together, we would just talk about her life and she'd be like, oh, like listen to this song on the radio and stuff like that. So there's a balance between being a researcher and just being like a person. And you find different ways when to apply that role with them. But yeah, it was really possible because of their initial openness. Yeah, they really made such a welcoming environment for me in Manahil.
What you're saying is that your faculty picked good sites. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Also, we have great partners.
In 1981, I was lecturing in Yugoslavia for the U.S. Information Agency. That the country would break up seemed very likely. Tito had just died, and I could tell, you could see some tensions. That there would be some violence accompanying it, yeah, I could see that. The savagery of the violence when the conflict broke out about 10 years later took me completely by surprise. I did not see that coming. The contrast with Czechoslovakia and the Velvet Divorce is striking. I don't know how that hatred was transmitted in Yugoslavia. I've asked about it. People blame the leaders. But to me, the interesting question is not why did Milosevic throw the match? It's why the match started such a fire. What was the tinder that I missed? I think just about all the experts missed. I don't know anybody who anticipated a conflict of that savagery. And it seems to me if we're going to address this issue of how we overcome the hatred, we should first try to understand what caused the hatred. It couldn't have been the educational system. They were trying to create an overall Yugoslav identity. It didn't work. But how that hatred was transmitted through what social organizations from generation to generation, that the savagery took place immediately, I don't understand. And it is something for all of you here possibly to research as you continue your studies.
I don't think there was a question in there. But did you have a question in there? Or was that just?
It's a comment if you want to respond.
You have any response?
I can start. I would say that is that's a little bit outside of our scope of research. Understanding the root causes of any conflict is vital to the solutions that are being brought forward. But I think specifically for Bosnia and Herzegovina, from the conversations that I had with faculty and staff and the participants at the center, with the multiple conflicts that have gone through Bosnia, there didn't seem to be a lot of healing from that. I remember with one conversation with a faculty member, there was a quote that they stated that like if someone wanted to go through Europe, they had to go through Bosnia. So you can imagine these different empires coming in and changing the structures and imposing these different laws on certain groups based on their ethnicities. And then when another empire comes in, they do the same thing, and they never really heal from that. So in my opinion, from what I saw, it was just a cycle of violence that never got broken, and it just kept increasing until eventually it broke out in the 90s. What happened in the 90s is not singular to that decade. It is centuries of history and violence that led to that moment.
All right, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Yeah.
I don't go here, but my mom does. Basically, my question was how, this is to all of the panelists, how do you guys wrestle with going to these communities, in Michelle's case, to a community of freshly displaced refugees, and with Manahil and Juliana, to a community that's trying to like rebuild these relationships that, as everyone has said, have been like for centuries so tense, and then, leaving after like getting to know these people and getting to know their experiences and really having them like bring your research to life. And they stay behind and you come back and you're sitting here and now talking to us about it. I just like how you guys deal with that.
Michelle, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I think that is that's a very good question and a very hard question. And I think it goes back to what Julian was saying, that as a human being, but also as a researcher, you have two hats. And sometimes you wear both at once, right? To say, I'm a researcher, I'm going to look at the findings and what people are saying. But also as a human being, I've, in a way, immersed myself into this community of people and they've welcomed me. And leaving, you do feel that you know the students' names, you know what they like, you start talking about Taylor Swift, and like it's becoming a thing, And I think for me, how I see my research really is that even though I'm not in Krakow or in the Edu hubs, this research is going to still impact that community, because my hope is that my findings can be used by the administration, by the institution to inform or reflect as well on their initiative and how successful it's been, or the impact that it's had, and use it perhaps to even strategize on ways they can use to go forward. So in that sense, I've left my little one mark there, and even though I'm no longer there and I've left, there's a way in which that research and the people that I met, they will forever stay part of me. And also as a researcher in undergrad, this being a very significant research project for me, it will forever stay in my memories. Krakow will forever stay in my memories. The Edu House will always be special to me. And I hope that whatever comes out of my research is also able to help them. And in that sense, even though I've left or I'm not in Krakow, our connection remains intact. I hope that answers your question.
That's a beautiful question. That was a very beautiful question, and it got me thinking. Bosnia will forever stay with me. It's a place like nowhere else I've ever been. It's called the Jerusalem of Europe for a reason. I've never seen religious diversity the way I saw it there. Just so many things were so striking about Sarajevo. Like in any street you would find a mosque, a synagogue, a church, and it was beautiful. And it was also transformative and very immersive, being there for only 3 weeks, which is amazing when you think about it. But I think when you need to gather stories and narratives over a very fixed timeline, and that is required of you as a researcher. And of course, that it takes a toll on you to hear those sort of stories, and they're very memorable and striking. But the way I think about it is that the lessons I learned from Sarajevo and from the people there will stick with me, because there's so much to learn from what happened there in terms of conflict resolution and in terms of peace building. If there's one thing that I would say that I learned from everyone that I spoke to, it's that the key to breaking the cycle of violence and fear is the truth. And that is what I think we were doing there as researchers. Like I don't want to make it sound very grand, but I do think that we played a very small role in allowing some people to speak their truth, people who weren't able to speak their truth for a long time or to get that narrative outside beyond the country. So even though we're here now in DC, that connection hopefully will continue, and I hope that we can help our host site continue to do the work that they're doing through the report that we're going to publish and by sharing their story with all of you.
Just to like briefly add what both Manal and Michelle said, yeah, Bosnia was such an experience for me, and as a pursuing researcher, it was such a great experience to have. It also helps with our research on an outsider perspective, because personally before coming through the ESJ, I had little knowledge of Bosnia and really only knew the war, but through this experience, I was really to see the country for what it actually is, and hopefully with our report and my relationships with the people at the center beyond my research, that people can really see that it's more than just the conflict that happened. These people are leading like truly beautiful lives, and that I hope that they are able to share their experiences with the rest of the world in the way that they want to. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I would like to thank our fellows one more time. Thank you, Michelle, for joining from Doha. I'd also like to give another shout out to our partners. Hopefully they are joining on Zoom or able to watch later. And then I would like to honor my co-conspirator, Dr. Fatima Husseini, who's in the back. And just want to thank her for such a wonderful year and appreciate all the work that you've done in this fellowship. We will take a 15-minute break. We'll be back at 11:15. Please refresh on snacks and coffee, and we'll see you again at 11:15.